looks like I'm ready to go live. Okay. All right. Yeah, man, that's only 7 minutes wasted. Okay. Not wasted. I mean, we all learned. Well, I learned something. I don't know what you guys got out of that. Hey, everybody. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Aloha. I'm tired. I wondered. I saw Devin on about 8:10. I was like, dude isn't up into bed, because he doesn't get up that early. Yeah, exactly. Okay, but I'm going to try something now since I feel the power. Anyway, any reports? Anyway, how you guys holding up? It's hard, right? It's a little bit hard and distracting. It is. It is indeed. I'm trying to get us out of here before that. You know what I mean? I'm trying to scoochy this thing up and get out of the house, as quick as possible. That's my goal. Yeah, well, that's not happening anytime soon. Um, Unfortunately. Yeah, not to. I sorry to burst your bubble on that one, Devin. Yeah. Did they cancel it? Oh, they might. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Right with you, man. No, it's a lot of crap. It is a lot of crapola overall. Anyway, okay. All right. What am I okay, let me see. Man, I was going to just like rock your world, you guys. I figured out like how to get the anyway, how to just get the audio feed coming out of the Discord channel to pipe into the YouTube broadcast, which, creates a more consolidated experience for the YouTube viewers. And, but anyway, I'm out of time right now. I can't do any more on that. I thought I could, you know. Um, and so let me see. Erica, what is 1700 sea shanties? I don't, I don't even know. It's what? Yeah, I can hear your voice. What you have to explain what that is without using the term sea shanties. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Nice. You know me. I'm always game for some obscure pointer. I love it. So I'll give it a sample. Okay. Yeah. So one of the things I was trying to do was anyway. I'm just gonna. It's so frustrating. You latch on to a technical task, and then you want to kind of just power through till it's cooked. This is very, very difficult to walk away from. I just have to say it. Okay. Is that really true, Matt? You literally were like, oh, okay. No, not quite. Okay. Well, that was, it was modestly funny. It was, I don't know, it was 7.4 decifunnies. Um, I don't know what that means. Okay, so hey, listen. But anyway, if everybody's hanging in there, I hope so. Just as a reminder, we did launch the School of Rock, uh, and I'm going to drop an invite link in Discord. And it is not required. Okay, there's nothing here. It's only if you just kind of want to. Um, there we go. Just not this. We're just trying to do something social. Something could be music, could be drama, could be film, could be whatever. We can launch a podcast. I don't care. I just, it's all just about a little bit of for the folks that need a little more social oomph in their day. That's kind of what that's about. And I know I do. So anyway, all right, cool. Is there anything that's kind of like that we're kind of pestering that we need to double check on? Where are we here? Right there. Anything? Any items of business? I'm gonna jump back into the data, how to look at data thing, and we'll get through that today, and that'll get us really close. Oh my freak! Oh, Apple. Okay. Sorry. It's just like I should never have rebooted my machine. Okay, I got it though. Okay. All right. Anything else? Anything anybody wants to share? Anybody? Bueller? 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 All right. Okay, let's do this thing. We were talking about metrics, right? The ability to measure stuff. I'm going to try to get through this set of slides today. And then we kind of like do some logic paradigm wrap up. And then I think we just kind of go into make sure that everybody knows what the assignments are. We're going to be super flex with deadlines, but touch base with me about deadlines, okay? I'm not going to be there. Nobody will be penalized for a late whatever. But I don't want to just throw the whole thing wide open. You know what I mean? It just makes it that much easier to go, well, I'll look at that in 4 weeks or whatever. So I'm trying to, trying to just work with you on it and make sure that we can nudge along. Okay. So here's what we were talking about. We was talking about metrics, and we talked about nominal scales, ordinal scales, interval, and ratio. This is stuff I would kind of like you to know and think about. I'll post these slides as well. But just to kind of review, a nominal scale is more like demographic buckets. Okay? In other words, it's only nominally a scale. It's not even really, to me, you think of scales, you think of stuff that you can be like better or worse, higher, lower, bigger, small, or something. And with nominal scales, it's like bucket, and there's no intrinsic thing. People, and by the way, one of the morals to the story here is that people get confused all the time, which is why we're talking about it, right? People will, for example, get confused and think that a nominal scale is somehow, inherently involves some kind of ranking, and it doesn't. It doesn't. And that is actually a risk. I think that's actually, some of the great, kind of social ills in the history of humanity have come from a nominal scale being interpreted basically as an ordinal scale, right? You have this color hair, you have this skin color, you have this, something that's demographically, sure, you can have a demographic bucket conversation, but it doesn't mean that this one's better than that one, and that's the confusion. You know what I mean? That there's a difference, sure. That difference means that one is better than the other. you know, unless you can actually categorize and get down to think like we've been talking about. Hope that makes sense. And again, the only thing you can really do is frequency. How many are in that bucket, kind of percentages of the overall, things like that. But you can't do most, frequentist statistics with that. The ordinal scale has some notion of, hot, medium, mild, good, better, best, bad, good, great, whatever, right? And the struggle, we talked a little bit about like the SRIs, right? Which are an ordinal scale, but they're treated by everybody as if they were an interval scale. Okay, so the ordinal scale simply means, the way you remember that is that there's an order, okay? But it's not an interval scale in the sense that I don't know that the difference between a 5 and a 4 in the SRIs is the same as the distance between a 2 and a 1. I would argue that that they are nowhere close to the same distance, okay? And then you start doing things like taking averages of ordinal data. You know what I mean? It's like if you take hot, medium, and mild and you try to take the average of what it is people get, at the Taco Bell, what is it? Mild 0.2. It doesn't make any sense. Now, if you can try to get an average by attaching, like, okay, we'll call hot will be 3, medium will be 2, mild will be 1, and then we can say that the average is 1.3. But even that, what does that even mean, right? So that's why things like median and mode make sense, right? The median choice at Taco Bell is probably mild, right? Median being the middlemost one, and mode is the one where it essentially just says, the thing that there's the most of. What's the biggest bucket? That's the most. You can have these conversations, but the analysis you can do with these things is different. Okay, and this brings us to interval scales. And the interval scales is one where there is a uniform distance. We know what that is, okay? But in an interval scale, there's no absolute zero, okay? So what the example would be like the, Fahrenheit or Celsius, right? The temperature scales. The difference between 99 degrees Fahrenheit and 100 degrees Fahrenheit and 100 and 101 is the same. And the difference between 0 and -1 is the same, okay, as an actual distance. What you can't do with an interval scale, there's no absolute zero on an interval scale. Everybody with me on this? So if it's 100 degrees out, it is not twice as hot as when it was 50, okay? That's not a thing in an interval scale because there's no absolute zero, okay? And then you can actually do parametric stats like a mean. The mean actually means something, no pun. And this is the real punchline. When I say that it rarely exists for software metrics, I really mean that. There's just very little that is really an interval scale. And so what that means in practice is that you're mostly stuck with nominal scale and ordinal scale. And now you're trying to make big business decisions. Do I ship or do I not ship? Do I acquire that company or not, right? With this kind of, with that kind of information. And then finally, the last one is ratio scales. And the ratio scale you can remember because there is an absolute zero. And the reason that that's important is if there's an absolute zero, you can actually do ratios, right? If you're in Kelvin, which is a temperature scale with an absolute zero, right? If you're at 100 degrees Kelvin and versus 200 degrees Kelvin, when you're at 200 degrees Kelvin, you are twice as hot as 100 degrees Kelvin, okay? Twice as much energy or whatever. And then when you got ratio scales, you've got basically all the statistical methods, and we're talking about frequentist statistics. That's the traditional, what we normally think of stats. I'm excluding things like Bayesian statistics and other kinds of machine learning things that do statistical analysis and crunching numbers and things like that. I'm talking about, the stuff you get in your stats class. Okay. Everybody cool so far with this? You can give me a textual head nod, or you can give me a a verbal shout out. Oh, let me see. The question about the decibel scale. The decibel scale, Nathaniel, what about the decibel scale? Yeah, well, the decibel scale is interesting because the decibel scale is a logarithmic scale, so that every time you move, so the answer is kind of no. So a logarithmic scale is one where, also like the what do you call it? The Richter scale, right, for earthquakes. It's a logarithmic scale, and the reason is because the thing moves. The distance is covered is so big. You start with like no sound, and there is a it's a ratio scale in the sense of having an absolute zero, but it's not a ratio scale in the sense that, like an interval scale, that the distance between 1 and 2 is the same as the distance between 2 and 3. Okay, on the Richter scale, which is for earthquakes, and the decibel scale. And if somebody wants to correct me or sanity check me, but this is my understanding on the decibel scale. Now I got to double check it because I feel like I might be just saying something really stupid. Let me see. Yeah, okay. The decibel scale, is a logarithmic scale. So is the Richter scale. So the idea behind a logarithmic scale is that when you move from 3 to 4 on the Richter scale, essentially you're going, I think it's actually like a 10x over, the previous section. So if this one's worth 1, that one's worth 10, this one's worth 100, that one's worth 1,000. So if you've got a logarithmic scale and you see this nice, it looks linear, right, which is just a fancy way of saying it looks like a line, and you see that, if you plotted that on a linear scale, it would be like that, right? You'd get that exponential growth. So, and we really didn't address that. We didn't really address that here. But so it's like similar in the sense of zero, right? Zero earthquake action. You can talk about that. Zero noise, zero sound, perfectly silent. Doesn't really exist, but you can, what I mean? You understand the concept. Anyway, I hope that helped. That was really a good question, Nathaniel, about, like the decibel scale. Okay. What else? Okay, let's keep going. So here's the deal. So having talked about you, so you got these four different kinds of scales, okay? And hang on a second. Sorry, every time I monkey around, then I have to like re-swappo my screens from what I'm seeing on my laptop, so that I can just kind of see everybody laid out. As I have said, I still need to get that extra monitor set up. Okay, so you've got these four different kinds of scales, and even at that level, there's a great deal of malpractice, okay? A great deal of malpractice with people just not understanding, these kinds of issues, right? Now, what comes up next, so just understand, I'm going to give you multiple axes, okay? The first axis is these scales. The second thing I'm going to give you is direct versus indirect metrics, okay? And this begins to be a lot more relevant. And again, it comes down to analysis of algorithms. And the reason I'm giving you all this stuff is I'm trying to get you to think about the final project, right? Where you're going to do your own analysis of, what's the right memory management, algorithm to use, right? First fit, best fit, worst fit. And we're going to, break this into that. But we'll have a little more, room to talk, I guess, after this foundation. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay, direct metrics. The direct metrics means that there's something I want to know and I can directly measure it. And this is, so let me throw the obvious question at you. How often is the thing that I can directly measure the actual thing that I most want to know? And I'm ignoring whether you're just like a stats geek and you're just like, I just really like knowing numbers. It's cool. That's fine. If you're that, kind of stats geek, totally fine. But I'm talking about someone's like, we really, really need to use Rust, right? And if you're a manager or the technical lead, right? You're like, why? Right? And then the Rust zealot, which there are some, launches into a big discussion about why Rust is better. Better. It's better. Why is it better? And so Ammon, said on the YouTube chat, what we want versus what we can measure is often never exactly the same thing. And that's right. I would almost even go and say is always never exactly the same. It's never exactly the same. I just have never really seen it. So you start thinking about what you can directly measure. You can identify, and again, if you guys want to jump on the chat, on the voice chat and contribute, it would be, this is really the part that's best done interactively. But let's say I can tell you the number of bugs found in this module, right? I guarantee you that's not what I actually want to know. What do I want to know? Yeah, only Siths deal in absolutes. What is that? What is that line? That's one of the dumbest of all the dumb George Lucas dialogue. That to me is one of the worst. Everybody deals in absolutes at some level, at a moderate level. Okay, no, what do I want to know? If I say, I can measure the number of bugs found. That's okay. What's my problem? Talk to me. I can tell you the number of bugs we found in this module. What do I really want to know? You can't understand. Ugh. Okay, hang on, Erica. I'm going to do the thing again. Boy, that's frustrating. Okay, I'm back. Can I hear you guys now? Yes, I can. Okay, thank you. Okay. Wait, say that again. Right. So that's right. So how many bugs are there? We don't know. And the truth is, you never know. You get that, right? You never can know how many bugs are actually in your software. You cannot. That's right. And why do you want to know the quality? That's dead on, Ammon. And why do you want to know the quality of the software? Because that's not even actually at the end of the day what you want to actually know. What do you really want to know? Sure. Does it meet expectations of the end user? And then that's also, so everything you're saying is correct. And that's also not what I actually want to know. Where I'm getting at is that there's a bottom line that's driving everything. You know what I mean? There's some kind of bottom line that is driving everything that we're doing. So any other ideas? Everything Ammon said was right. But any other thoughts or ideas about, right? Number of bugs found in this module. What are the things that I don't know? Let's start with that. What are the things I don't know? I told you, here's this module of code. Ammon wrote this code. And all I know is that there were 13 documented bugs in that code. That's all I know. Are you equipped? You understand that at the end of the day, remember we talked about at the very beginning of these slides that metrics occupy the intersection between questions we're trying to answer and what we can actually observe, right? Metrics are trying to enable us to make certain decisions. So I say there are, what did I say, 13 known bugs? in the module that Ammon wrote? What do I not know? Let's go rapid fire. What do I not know? Either on chat. So Ammon on the Discord chat, what were the severity of the bugs? Yep. What else about the severity of the bugs? What else? Like in the field, right? If you ship this, for example, there's this one bug that will, whatever, it wipes out humanity. It's got a 1 in 70 trillion chance of happening. Do you ship? Right? I mean, it's not just enough to say there's a level 1 bug in this software. Okay, but what's the risk of shipping versus what is the risk of not shipping? You realize there's always a risk to not shipping, right? You're missing a window. And there's always a risk to shipping. And there's so many dynamics, right? What else do I not know? I don't know. So I think Matt said, or somebody dropped the chat, the severity of the bugs, which is, yep. But also the distribution of the severity of those bugs, the likelihood that they are going to happen, what the damage is going to be if they do happen, right? And again, what's the risk if I don't ship while I wait to fix those bugs? I might be hosed by waiting. So it's better maybe to ship, So the notion of, if somebody starts to make, as Ammon said earlier, only Siths deal in absolutes, which is absolutely true. But the reality is, if you say something like, we will never ship with a level 1, level 1 being maybe the most severe, right? And that's an ordinal scale. Level 1 bugs are worse than level 2 bugs. Level 4 might be just like cosmetic typo in a help screen, right? That's a bug. We will never ship with a number 1 with a level 1 bug. I think that's bad policy. I think you should look very, very hard before you do, and you should understand in detail what your risks are of not shipping, because you might just be dead in the water, And shipping might mean that only 1,000 people are going to see your product, in the next 3 weeks, and you're willing to absorb the damage that those 1,000 people are going to experience. In other words, it is constantly a series of trade-offs based upon incomplete information. So the point just being, if I tell you how many bugs there are in the module, also how big was the module, right? If there were 13 bugs and Ammon had written a 3-line ML program, that might be a problem. If it was, 20,000 lines of original C# code and there were only 3 bugs and they were, 2 of them were level 2 and the others were, I would say, man, Ammon's a pretty good coder. If they were all critical level 1 destroy the company bugs, and it was only 100 lines of code, probably need to fire that guy, right? And yet the same number, 13 bugs in Ammon's module, not to pick on Ammon or any of the Ammons. You know what I mean? You don't know anything, really. What you know is just worthless. I wanted to do a quick catch up. Let me see. Yeah, so other things. What were the severity of the bugs? Were the bugs fixed? Yeah, and Emin mentioned on the Discord chat, this is kind of for those on the YouTube that are not on Discord. Often we classify bugs at my work based on whether or not there's a viable workaround. That's totally reasonable. If there is a workaround, you kind of go, well, it's inconvenient, but it's not, we're not dead in the water. And if you are just like dead in the water, you do this one thing and you break those 20 companies that depend on your platform. That's different from they will each have to incur 4 hours of engineering time to adapt to the new rev. Those are 2 different scenarios, right? So I like that. Right, and if the user is likely to try the workaround, I like that a lot. Ran into a bug on one of the products, classified as a P2 bug because users could restart the app and the bug was extremely rare. Totally reasonable. Well, we didn't take into account the fact that users on this particular platform don't know how to kill an app and then instead opted to delete and reinstall. Whew. I didn't see that coming, right? That's a great war story, Ammon. That's fantastic. Yeah, then Matt commented, right? Forget the have you tried turning it off and on again. Now you go into this like Microsoft Word crashed. Time to format my C drive and reinstall US. By the way, back in the 90s and 80s, that was actually a thing. I literally did things like reformat my hard drive and reinstall the OS in order to get an application to work. Back in the day. So yeah. Okay, these are great comments. I really appreciate them. Okay. So do you get the idea that everything that's direct is worthless as a final ending point? It's not worthless as a stepping stone, but it's worthless as like a destination. You can't really make decisions, okay? Based upon direct metrics. I can ask like how many chairs are in our classroom and I can give you a number. And then what do that's not what I want to know. I want to know how many chair assets the university has so I can do planning. There's a bunch of things that I do want to actually know, and that just kind of goes into the hopper. But also, and speaking to our current crisis, the pandemic and the health crisis, Mr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci, is that guy a doctor? I think he is. Anyway, Dr. Fauci, he made a comment that I heard where he said something like, and the only thing I didn't like about his comment was the starting point. He said something like, my friends in the healthcare industry. Oh, hey, Nathaniel, can you mute your mic? Better. Anyway, what he said was, yeah, my friends in the healthcare industry or my research friends or whatever probably aren't going to appreciate me saying this. And then he said a truth. So I hate the intro because to me, like, why would you be worried about that? What he said was that the models that we're trying to use are only as good as the assumptions. That's just true. That's just modeling. That's how modeling works. Modeling is not like, modeling isn't something that like, oh, I have this magic model and then the model tells me all kinds of crap that I don't know myself. It can try to do certain kinds of things. Also with machine learning, you do a lot of, experimentation and bopping around, but you've got a training set. In other words, you have all these things, what was actually true on a training set. Having trained it on that training set, I can now extrapolate to a bigger world. Now I can try to project into the world of the actual data, but I have to have had a training set first, right? And this, frankly, is any of the biggest problems with models that don't really have a training set. Hey, Nathaniel, can you mute again or something? I'm not sure. You keep coming on. Anyway, when you're dealing in models, like on this current pandemic, we do have the ability to see, okay, what happened in Italy, what happened in Spain, what happened in France, Yeah, okay, so Nathaniel got his mute on. Okay, thank you, Nathaniel. No, but you know what I'm saying? And so I get nervous about things where there's no training set, okay? And you talk about modeling. Our models say whatever, that we're going to have, population explosion. It's a big issue no problem, Nathaniel. That was the big thing in the 60s when I was a kid was, it's going to be Soylent Green. We're, it's all going to be Soylent Green in the end, you know. And I'm not going to give you the spoiler on that one because it's only been like 50 years since that movie came out. But, you know, and the problem is that what are the priors? What's the training set for the models? You know what I mean? I mean, I remember even as like a 10-year-old watching these projections, literally like by the year 2000, there will be 400 billion people on planet Earth or whatever. And you're like, sure, given these assumptions, but are those assumptions actually going to hold? And that's the problem. Okay. Anyway, so I hope that makes sense. That so that when we start talking about, you know, modeling, you know, anyway, so Fauci said that, and basically he's like, and now every week we're learning more, therefore the models, the things we thought were true, you know, like for example, with coronavirus, we have an assumption that once you have had it, that you acquire a lasting immunity to it over a long period of time. That's common, but it's not universal. There are viruses that you can catch over and over and over again that the body does not create, you know, an immunity to, or some where you'll have an immunity for some window of time, and then after that you no longer have the immunity. I think that's where you wind up having to have like booster shots, right? Right, Erica? Yeah, and then the virus mutates, right? And then you don't have an immunity to the mutation necessarily, you know? So in other words, what he's really saying is, look, everybody, this is bloody difficult. This is really complex, and there are a lot of moving parts. So let's just not act like we know all of these things. So what we don't want, so we'll go back to the pandemic, you know, there's direct metrics, and you know, we could say one of the direct metrics, I'll tell you what a non-direct metric is, or something we cannot know, is like how many people have the coronavirus, right? I could have it and not know it. You could have it and not know it, like right now. Presumably, and you may never know it, right? It's possible. And yet be carrying it around, giving it to somebody like me and killing me. And that, so it's, you can't know. You can't know how many cases there actually are. So then you're like, well, we can know how many people died. Now, if you're tracking the news, you know, now there's a big controversy about what we count or don't count. And there's a bunch of memes now flooding social media, right? This guy, like, well, I saw one, you know, this guy like fell from an airplane without a parachute. Another, you know, tragic coronavirus death, you know, and it's kind of mocking the idea that in some states the doctors are given discretion if they suspect coronavirus to mark it down, whether or not there's been an actual test. Now, your mileage may vary on that. You may feel like, look, that's the best information we've got, and it's okay. And then the other side can kind of go, well, no, don't be stupid. You know, test it or don't test it, know or don't know, but don't be guessing. You understand that these are both legitimate perspectives? They really are both. You may like one or the other better, but they are in fact both legitimate as perspectives. In my opinion, they're both legitimate. They just yield different results, okay? So pivoting back, yeah, sometimes you really can't even do it. It's not even possible or affordable, okay? So then what's an indirect metric? The indirect metric is something that's easy to measure, or at least it's possible to measure, right? And then we try to correlate it with something else, all right? So for example, back to the SRI, student evaluations of teachers. What are you really trying to measure? Anybody want to throw time for some more interaction from the like 5 people that would generate? Somebody who's not talking, jump in, you know? What are those SRIs for? Why? Why does it? And we're ignoring the fact that it is statistical malpractice to take an average. That is malpractice. You know what I mean? It also gives a lot of power to the handful of you that are just feeling really pissy about me or the class or life or something. It gives you a lot of power. Your one carries way more power than the 5s of 10 people because we take the mean. and because it's a little bit, you know. Also, by the way, I didn't mention this last time. Even when you've got interval data, the mean only makes sense when there aren't outliers. The mean makes sense when you've got approximately a normal distribution. It can be a little skewed, but approximately normal. You got like bimodal distribution where it's like you got bump and then there's another bump. What's the mean? The mean doesn't represent anybody. Nobody falls where the mean is. So it's like, again, it's like the average of hot sauce. You know, it's hot sauce and medium sauce. What's the average? Medium 0.5, right? You with me on this? So anyway, it's statistical malpractice on two fronts. One is it's ordinal data, not interval data. And two, when there are outliers, meaning, you know, you got whatever, it's this big, whatever normal thing, then there's a gap, and then there's like two people that were cranky. Then they have inordinate power. And that's not the right one. The right one would be, would be median, which is resilient to outliers. No, okay, but that's just enhancing your statistical refresh. Why does the university, every university, do SRIs under whatever name? What do you got? And tell me if I can't hear, or if it appears that I'm not hearing you. Let me see. I've got Michael, one of the Michaels. Yeah, what have I got? Let me see. Devin, yeah, okay. So Erica, how good the teacher is? Sure, whatever that means, right? Devin, effectiveness of the teacher's teaching ability, right? Whether or not the teacher's capable, whether or not the average student is able to learn from the teacher, how he or she's doing with the current course, effectiveness of the class, whether it meets expectations, right? All fair. Anybody else want to throw anything in there? Teacher's effectiveness over on the YouTube? Yeah. Right? But does it actually measure that? Does it, I mean, just in reality, in practice, does it actually measure it? And is it an absolute yes, an absolute no, or a qualified yes or a qualified no, where it's like, well, not really, but, or yeah, kind of, but, okay? And the number one thing that I would just toss out is, the thing that I would toss out is that it is, does it measure teacher effectiveness? No, there's no absolute yes. It certainly is not absolutely yes, but the truth is it's also not absolutely no, right? For example, if you've got, let me see, Devin says, I feel like the free response section of the SR is the only useful part, and that isn't even measured in the metrics, right? Yes, and you know why, Devin? Because you can't measure free response. You can, but then it takes a subjective encoding process where somebody has to look in there and say, you know, all of these students said the same thing. Dr. K seems whatever. He seems early onset Alzheimer's, whatever, right? If everybody says something, you know that's meaningful, but you've got to actually, there's an entire process of understanding and managing textual data, verbal data, interview data, and it's all subjective. It's all, qualitative, not quantitative. But in order to run any stats or make any sense out of it, you know, by the way, the plural of anecdote is not data. Okay? In other words, you get into a meeting and then all of a sudden they start telling you stories. Okay? What am I doing over there? They start telling you stories. Well, I used to go through this at another place of employ. There was always this thing that would be like, hey, I'm thinking about hiring this one guy. And then somebody would be like, we had a redheaded guy once, and boy, that did not end well, And you're like, What in the hell are you talking about? You know, it's like, that is not even data. It's a story and everything about it is wrong. Yeah, sorry, Joe. No, it never works out, right? It never works out. No, you know what I mean? It's like, and everybody will have their stories, but people don't know how to just gather actual data to make real decisions, including, bringing it back, programming languages, right? Or things like, what memory management algorithm should I use? Are you capable? You're going to be. Okay. So I hope you get the idea with that, right? Let me see. Lets the student say what they want to the teacher without letting the teacher know which student said it. Yeah, it protects anonymity and lets the student, praise or vent or whatever. Okay, so indirect metrics. Here's the thing, though. The indirect metrics are flawed. Every possible thing we can actually do is flawed. Okay? That is just reality. This is why I get really pissy anytime anybody says to me in any field of endeavor that the science is settled. I don't like the statement. The statement itself smacks of intellectual dishonesty. It does. I don't even care what it is. Gravity. The science is not settled. Yes, it's not settled. If it were, explain it to me. It doesn't even make any sense. There are still people, you realize, yes, I've stuck to the planet as long as I've been alive. I haven't floated into space. Everybody in the southern hemisphere has not fallen off. You know what I mean? I get that, but you understand that there are still physicists, right, that are researching gravity. Because there's so much we don't know. Because the research base is so big. And none of them would say the science is settled. None of them. It wouldn't even make any sense. I'm not trying to pick on, the big one. Oh, crap, Michael. The world is flat? Oh, my gosh. I knew. No, actually, Michael, you're wrong. I researched this out. Saw pictures from the space station. It's actually turtles. It's turtles all the way down. Okay, that's just FYI. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I'm not just trying to pick on, the climate change space, which is the only space in all of science where I've ever actually heard the expression the science is settled. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I'm not picking on that. But I feel like the science is we're always trying to figure stuff out. So when Fauci said, people aren't going to like this, but, the reality is the models are only as good as our assumptions. Hell yes, this is true. They are only as good. And our assumptions, hopefully, are refining. So here's the thing about SRIs. Do they tell you anything? Yes, absolutely, right? Like, you show me somebody who's constantly rocking between 4s and 5s, right? And you're like, well, what does that really mean? There could always be a cranky person that really should be all 5s, but the cranky pulls them down to 4.5. You can have that whole discussion. And then there's somebody else, and they always are pulling between a 1 and a 2. Let's be really honest here. That if that's all you knew, that Professor A consistently gets SRI reviews from students that are in the 4 to 5 range, and Professor B always gets reviews from students that are in the 2 to 3 range, and that's all you know, do you have enough to make like a higher fire decision? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that? I obviously have an opinion about it since I've been in academia for a long time. Yeah, so Ammon said, at that point, you want to gather more data from the students. Yeah. I'd want to know more. And also, by the way, this is where, the comments, like if you got somebody who's always rocking 5s, like 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and you start reading the comments and the students are like, yeah, he gave me $20 to say this. And everybody says that, then it becomes meaningful, right? Or if somebody else is like, yeah, he always brings donuts, I really like that. And then, or you go to the one where they're getting 2s and 3s. Now you look at the qualitative information, the reviews from the students, and they're just like very inappropriate, whatever. This professor was harassing me, and everybody says this, that's really meaningful. But I will tell you this, comments, let me see. Yeah, that's right. Simon just says, there'd be a bunch, you got to get more data because it might just be people are whatever. He might be doing, in other words, he might be doing everything right possible and it has nothing to do with the appropriateness of what's going on in the classroom. Totally possible. I would suggest, though, that if literally all I knew was that this one professor was consistently between 4 and 5, and that this other professor was between 2 and 3, that when you then went, I would put then a $10,000 bet down that when I start to read the things, I'm going to find effective teacher who cares about the students, understands the material, practices proper pedagogy, and is really an effective teacher, and doesn't do all of those things. And I give you 95, 98%, 99% confidence that that's probably enough to convict. But 4.1 versus 4.4, I can't tell you anything yet about that. Same thing with your GPAs. Why do we care about your GPA? We want to know, what do we want to know, right? In grad school or professional work, internships, whatever, right? What do we want to know? Yes. Devin said time management. I think that's actually true. I think the single biggest thing that GPA correlates to is personal management skills, not to general intelligence, right? So Ammon says, given some assignment or a task, can you do it? Can you follow through? And so Matt, right, willingness to conform to arbitrary, shoot, I lost a comment real quick. What was it, Matt? Willingness to conform to arbitrary requirements and stick to it. Yes. And there are people who are the best hire you'd ever want to make, and they just suck at school. That is really a possibility. Here's another one, last one, and I got to get on to the next slide. I watched yesterday, it was a documentary about Tom Brady. Tom Brady was, till recently, so Nathaniel says, not about how smart you are. Absolutely. Now, honestly, to rock a 4-point, you do have to be, packing some IQ and probably some, some dysfunction. I think you've got to be a little dysfunctional to rock a 4-point. Because you have to be really obsessive about certain things. Now, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. I've always had the feeling myself that when I was hiring, I would rather hire, somebody between a 3.2 and a 3.8. Below the 3.2, you're not sure if they can follow through, but it's not strictly true. I'm watching this special. It was just a documentary about Tom Brady. Tom Brady was the quarterback for the Patriots, New England Patriots. This is football. This is a game known among our people as football. And Brady was a guy who was taken in the 6th round of the NFL draft. There were 6 quarterbacks taken before him. And the spec sheet was basically he can't run, he's not strong, he can't, the football has a wobble on it, all these things. Now, he had a really successful season at Michigan as a senior, but basically the spec sheet, his 40-yard dash was suck, his vertical leap was suck. Really, it was suck. But he just had this intangible thing, right? Attitude, confidence, mental game. It doesn't show up on the spec sheet. He's taken in the 6th round, 6 quarterbacks ahead of him. He goes on to win 6 Super Bowls and become a Hall of Famer and, arguably one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the history of the game, right? But all the spec sheet said, not going to be your guy. And it really was about that whole thing. The whole documentary was really about, they just talked to people, why didn't you take Tom Brady? Oh, he did not impress. He did not impress. But the question is, what does a guy do at quarterback when he's getting crushed repeatedly by a linebacker? Not how well can he throw when he's standing alone on a field when someone's got a stopwatch. Anyway, it's really about indirect metrics. And they talk about the intangibles, that he just seems to find a way to win. That's the thing. Okay, Ty Detmer once said, legendary quarterback from BYU, not legendary offensive coordinator. So sad because I'm a big Detmer fan. But he once said about he had a throw that had a little wobble in it, and he said that it made it softer for the receivers to catch, made it softer to catch. I like that line. Okay, so you got the idea, right? Okay, so be when you're using indirect metrics, you are trying to take what you can measure and use it to extrapolate to what you want to know. I can measure SRIs. You know how many threats to validity there are on that? Massive. But I can at least get it versus nothing. Now, of course, it's not true that that some metric is better than none. That's not true. There are misleading metrics that you think are correlated to something they're not, and now you're just chasing noise. You're literally just like chasing noise in the data because your model suggests that there's something going on, but it's just noise in the data. You're overfitting the data. Okay, so here's some indirect metrics. Dilbert again. To Dogbert, the consultant, a good way to judge corporate health is to look at your employee turnover rate. And the pointy-haired boss says, our turnover rate is very low. We only hire people who aren't skilled enough to work anyplace else. Dogbert, maybe metrics aren't the way to go here. Pointy-haired boss, no metric has beaten me yet. Yeah, so, right? So it's like employee turnover rate. What Adams is trying to get to here, what Scott Adams is trying to get to, is you could say, how good are you? What's your HR? How you doing with HR issues? Oh, our turnover rate is really, really low. You know, reality is there might be like a sweet spot. You know, okay, if this screen is like, my range, it might be that if you get too low on your turnover rate, that's a little weird, right? Because you've got to be hiring people that are good enough to have other options, some of whom are going to take it, right? So if like nobody ever leaves, I got to say it's a problem. Now, that's the limit of the function, right? As n approaches, everybody leaves. Limit of the function as n approaches, everybody leaves. Did I say nobody? I meant nobody. Limit of the function as n approaches, everybody leaves. Problem, right? That's a problem. And there's probably a sweet spot somewhere in the middle. This is my sweet spot, right? Where you hire great people and most of them stay. And I think great organizations hire mostly great people and mostly they stay. And if you're really smart, like a Google, I know a number of friends, multiple, that have gone to work at Google, been there for some stretch of time, and then they like leave because they want to whatever. They want to go try out some other job or whatever. And usually that's a big moment, right? You're like, oh, you're leaving us in the lurch, and you feel like I'm burning my bridges. The way Google does it, at least historically, I don't know what they're at, this week, but historically, Google's been like, yeah, go do it. We love you. If you want to come back, you can come on back. That's a confident play. It's also a play that says, I'm not worried about, they're not freaking out about that bit of turnover. They're willing to say, well, you probably ought to just go discover what the other companies are like. And most of the time, my experience is with the people that I know, and I know dozens of people at Google, but in different locations. But the people that I know that have left, 90% of them eventually come on back because they're like, yeah, I got out there, I realized that I love what I'm doing over here. So totally fair. Here's another one. Dogbert says you can gauge your success by the number of repeat customers, right? So again, it's like low turnover. That's good, right? Repeat customers. That's good, right? And then he says, I'm proud to say that virtually every customer gets another unit within 3 months of buying the first one. You're like, wow. And by the way, we are ostensibly in the middle of an election year, and obviously the coronavirus has pushed the election. Well, the election's still going on. It's now on the stage of the coronavirus and the pandemic. That's where the the electioneering is playing itself out, right? But we're spared from some of the straight up, debates and whatever right now because of this. I'm not trying to make light of, like, oh, thank goodness there's a pandemic so we don't have to watch the idiot politicians. But I am saying in the face of this horrific pandemic, it is nice that we don't have nonstop politicking, so and so at a campaign stop. I like that aspect. Okay. Okay, Ethan. Yeah. So, yeah, I know some of you love sports. It's not common. It's not super common in our major as much as in other majors like PE. Anyway, what was I talking about? What was I talking about? I forgot. I got distracted by Ethan's sports comment. Politics, yeah. No, there's this thing where they're like, when I was governor of Texas, we created 70,000 jobs. Bull crap. I don't even know anything about anything that you're talking about or any of the data. As soon as, you know what I mean? Lies, damned lies, and statistics. What does it even mean? Right? Are you with me? Sure, this many jobs showed up in this, slot on a spreadsheet in your state when you were on the payroll as the governor. But the statement, I added 70,000 jobs, I just will tell you that's just false. And I don't care which governor, which state, which party. It's false. Because it is a incredibly reductionist perspective into what actually happened. And the dynamics are huge. You just happen to, you can ride a trend going up. You can ride a trend going down. You can, balance the federal budget when you're Bill Clinton, in part because you've got a Speaker of the House who's willing to shut the government down to do it. And you have a peace dividend because you just broke up the entire Eastern Bloc by winning a financial war called the Strategic Defense Initiative, which was launched by Reagan. I mean, the dynamics of, and then you might question or sanity check my analysis. Totally fair, because my analysis can be completely wrong, and yours might be the better analysis, right? But again, be very, very wary of the reductionist analysis that just like throws out a number and now we know something. I'm just going to call bullcrap pretty much every time. And this includes when the thing that they're throwing out is something that fits my personal narrative, right? That thing might fit my politics. I'm still going, it's nice, convenient, but I don't buy that. I mean, I like the conclusion, but I don't buy that. I'm equally skeptical when it's, coming out of, when it feeds my own bias. Oh, yeah. So the boss says, almost everybody gets a new one within 3 months. And then Dagbert goes, what if you don't count warranty replacements? He's like, then we don't look so good. Right? Because it's like you're digging deep. Threats to validity. You gave me one number. I don't even know what it meant. Okay? And really, really, truly, by the way, if anyone's sitting there just going, yeah, those damn Republicans, they always do that. And somebody else is like, the damn Democrats, they always do that. Just shut up, really, because everybody does it. Okay? Everybody. Seriously. So get off the self-righteous high horse about how only the other side of your political persuasion engages in this sort of thing. Okay. Have I offended everybody yet? By the way, am I still audio coming through? We've had no head nods for a little while. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, okay, I got a few comments coming. Thank you. Yeah, I get lonely over here. Not offended. Come on. I'm not working hard enough. I gotta up my game if nobody's offended. Okay, let me keep going. Let me keep rocking and rolling here. Okay. No, but I really, if I'm going to offend, I'm going to do it equal opportunity. Okay. Let's do this. Let's keep going. Okay. Now, objective versus subjective. Again, right? We got the 4 different kinds of scales, right? That lend to a lot of malpractice. We've got the direct versus indirect. And now let's throw objective and subjective. Okay? The basic definition of objective metrics are metrics that no matter who measures it, you get the same value. It's not dependent upon who's asking or who's looking, right? And you know that there's a lot of sort of objective data, A new survey says, what were the questions? What were the questions? And really and that's why, again, I've done surveys. I've done, real studies with real subjects and qualitative stuff and interview stuff and processed all that data and done all that number crunching. And anytime anybody says a new study shows, here was another one, and I saw this in one of the recent. I try not to watch the press briefings because it's too depressing on almost every imaginable level. Starting with, until just a week or so ago, everybody shoulder to shoulder on the top, and everybody jammed together in the middle. That was one, by the way. I posted a picture from a press briefing on Facebook, and it was really remarkable. Because I had people that were like, yeah, look at that damn Trump administration, freaking idiot, standing up there. I'm like, the picture also shows the press corps, which is overwhelmingly Democratic and liberal. And they're all sitting shoulder to shoulder. Stop with your self-righteous bullcrap. Really, just stop. It was an equal opportunity thing. Like, all these people are in this room sharing airspace together, talking about a pandemic that is airborne. I thought it was dumb, and that was my point. Not that who's stupid. Everybody's stupid in this room. Okay, yeah, what am I getting at? So objective versus subjective. If you're going to tell me that a study says, it was a handful of reporters asked questions like this. Again, I'm not trying to pick on it. I just think this is an absurd question. Mr. President, what do you say to people who are upset with the way you've handled this crisis? Right? Now, if I'm the president, which of course will never happen, although I might be able to run for another 20 years, given the way that this whole thing has evolved. Okay? You know what I would say if I were the president? I would say, so who are the people? I don't know where you got your data. I mean, I'm sure there are people that are not happy with the way I've handled the crisis. I'm confident of that. I don't know, strictly speaking, who they are. If you're not happy with the way I've handled the crisis, please speak for yourself, and I'd be happy to address it. If there's specific statements from people, or if there's been a survey or specific data, I'd be happy to look at that. Then and they're like, yeah, a survey says 40%, what were the questions? That's a fair. Now, the problem, of course, is the newspapers would then run the headline, President Knudsen, evasive in face of blistering critique. But the reality is, what were the questions is an absolutely legitimate question. And it's intellectually dishonest to sort of like slam my intentions because I want to understand what the data really says, so I know what question I'm actually answering. So objective versus subjective, we're about out of time. Subjective is really a matter of opinion, okay? And even the objective measurements can be highly variable, okay? Was number of deaths caused by COVID-19 objective or subjective? I think it's subjective. And yet it's one of the few things that I've said earlier we can kind of hang our hats on, okay? The classic, I'll wrap up here because we're about done. Ice skating judges, and the Russian judge gives her a 3, Anyway, the problem is that sometimes it's all you got. How do you judge ice skating? And then there's this whole idea of custom metrics. And I would just say every meaningful metric ever used was at the end of the day a custom metric. Okay? And I'm skipping that. And I just want to drop this one on you. Lines of code, cyclomatic complexity, bugs per whatever. There's some common metrics. And yeah, let's do this. Let's come back when we come back on Tuesday. Today's Thursday. Let's come back to right here on the examples of common metrics. And that's it, man. That's what I got for today. We will wrap up. We'll be done. I want to try to finish next week and then get you kind of just like wrapping up the project. You know, maybe we do some kind of a take-home final. I'm not sure. I want to just do something to grease the skids for everybody. Okay? So I'm good. That was a good rant. That rant will probably keep me out of Congress one day. You know what I mean? It'll be like the expose. What Congressman Knudsen really meant. Anyway, hey, thanks everybody. What else? Yeah, Ammon, yeah, I'm back. See, I'm just looking back at some of the comments. Yeah, the sample group, things like that. Statistical malpractice, man. Anyway, so yeah, everybody, we're done. I'm just going to give it a minute in case there's just any lingering comments. And I actually have one, while we're just, this isn't really class. This is the after class phase. But I wanted to share something that I saw. It was a thread. It was a thread on Facebook, so it was probably all true. But just check this out. And again, if anybody wants to like stick around for this little mini discussion, you're welcome to. It'll be part of the recording, but this isn't strictly speaking the class stuff. Somebody posted this thing that they had seen on Twitter. It was a screen grab of a thing from Twitter. And this individual had said the following. Now, you know, we're in this interesting situation where people are being devastated, you know, financially, economically, and the cost is huge. And this person said this: I'm honestly surprised about how few people can, and it's a bad sentence, so it's not well written, how few people who can comfortably work from home and don't fear the loss of a paycheck even consider. Now, if you tease this apart, he's saying he's surprised by how few people even consider the millions of unemployed and economically broken in this country. You know I'm going to weigh in on this, right? Even though, you know, it's posted by someone I love. Anybody know? You know what my problem is. If anybody wants to chime in, please. I'm still going live here. If anybody wants to chime in, either on Discord or on YouTube. But, yeah, what's the problem? What's the problem? Anyway, here's what I posted. Now, down below, he continues with his own comment on his own thread. Have savings to pay rent or mortgage for 6 months? Great. Most don't. Have a steady job that guarantees you a paycheck every month? Great. Many don't. These are true. That's absolutely true. Don't forget that you have the luxury to be hysterical about the virus and to push for draconian maximalist policies. And again, I think that's actually true. What he's trying to say is when you're feeling financially secure, it's easier to say, let's beat the virus. Sure, there'll be an economic cost, but we got to beat the virus when you're feeling, right? And where Nathaniel's going on Discord is exactly right on. This is my problem. So I think his fundamental idea is true, right? That when you're feeling comfortable financially, it's easy to focus on the virus and not on the economics. And when you're losing everything, you know, when you don't have enough money to pay, you know, your pharmacy bill because you've got somebody with a condition and they've got a, you know what I'm saying? And they need to, like, you got a $500 a month pharmaceutical bill for some condition, and all of a sudden you lost your job, you lost your insurance, you know, you're having to go on Cobra. I mean, And it's not even just emotionally devastating, it's in many respects life-threatening. The economics of the issue are life-threatening. And then, right, as Devin says, sometimes the solution to the virus can look worse, can maybe even be worse, right, than the actual toll of the virus in terms of even actual lives. In other words, it's a gray zone with a tremendous amount of complexity and a crap ton of suffering all around. Okay, so I'm agreeing with this guy on his punchline. I'm emoting deeply with this guy, except for this part. I'm honestly surprised by how few people who are secure even consider the millions of people that are struggling like me. I'm going to just call bullcrap because you don't know. You don't know, you know. You just don't know. You made a statement that you can't back up. And the first statement was essentially to accuse those who are currently stable of not even thinking about the millions who are out of work. So I got this university professor gig. I'm pretty stable and I can do it from home. So I'm one of the people that's actually in way better position than so many, right? And it's absurd to just throw that out. I'm surprised. Why are you surprised? Were you surprised because data showed up? Because where'd that data come from? What were you surprised by? You know what I mean? Were you surprised by your opinion? Were you surprised by your unsubstantiated opinion? And the reality is, maybe it's true. Maybe what he's saying is true. I mean, that is absolutely possible. I'm just saying he doesn't know it, and I don't either. You know, I know that I'm in a relatively secure position because I happen to be a university professor, you know. But even the notion of like who don't fear the loss of a paycheck. You don't think I fear the loss of a paycheck? You don't think that I don't fear the university saying, you know what, Chuck, you're the newest guy on faculty and they made us cut the budgets because the tax revenues are going down. You don't think that's a possibility? It is. Nobody is potentially off the hook. So everybody who's thinking and conscious, sentient, is fearing economically. That's one thing, I think. And anyway, so I said the following, and I'll share this, and I'll mic drop and I'll leave it here. I said, how does he know that the majority of people who are okay financially don't consider the millions who are suddenly out of work? Any sense of his source of information, or does he just possess powerful mind reading skills? Now, at this point, later on, I went back and looked at it, and there was a thread that my nephew had gotten involved in, who basically agrees with me and is reasonably thoughtful about it, who dared to kind of question some of the assumptions. And then I added the following, which I'll read it here and then I'll be done. I said, I just read the thread above, and I think my nephew and I are kind of on the same page. Collectively, we need greater empathy. We need to comprehend the devastation that's pouring out across America and the human cost of the economic loss that's piling up. We need to factor this in as we consider how best to handle this unspeakable challenge. I believe we're all united in this. Okay? The individual that you quoted leads with sweeping assumptions about what he presumes the vast majority of still employed people are thinking or feeling. I don't think that's the main point he's trying to make. In my view, he obscures his main point behind a sweeping accusation that may or may not be true, and neither he nor any of us on this thread have a way of actually knowing whether it's true beyond the subjective reach of our own personal experiences. I think he has a very important point to make, but by leading with a sweeping and bitter accusation, he does a piss-poor job of helping those he's trying to help. His final sentence is really his punchline. Don't forget that you, those that are financially secure, have the luxury to be hysterical about the virus and to push for draconian maximal policies. He's hitting on a very important issue and one that I agree with. I just wish he had been less negative, accusational, and oblique on his way there. In my opinion, your mileage may vary, and I only got one like on this comment, and it was from my nephew. So nobody else on the thread, I don't know, maybe they haven't gotten up yet today, I don't know. Anyway, I'm just saying, all I'm pressing for is intellectual honesty in the analysis and the data that gets thrown around. That you're going to draw different conclusions than me, that's great, that's fine. I'm out of time. Anyway, hey, take care. I think about you guys a lot. Ping me if you're struggling or you just want to talk, or, if you want to join the School of Rock or whatever. All right. I'm going to shut her down. Just remember, 50,000 jobs were created while I was the governor of Texas. That's how good I am. Just think of what I'll do for America. Now I'm running for office. I should run for frickin' office. You know that? I'm unelectable. You know that, right? I'm unelectable. Anyway. Yeah, I can't hear the voice input. I'm sorry, Devin. Sorry, man. Yeah, I just pinged it. I put it back on there in case. Sorry, man. I hate that the voice stuff goes away. I'm back on in case you got any verbal jabs you want to toss out there, man. Okay, later, everybody.